We continue looking into the pipeline and gasoline crisis going on the east coast of the United States, the potential for how ransomware should be handled in the future, as well as following up on stories related to jobs in the United States, as well as mask mandates throughout the country. These stories and more in your May 14th Not So News update. Please like and subscribe if you're looking for daily news content, and let's dive on in. Starting us off from the Gateway Pundit, it's been only 4 months. Keystone Pipeline is shut down. Gas prices are highest in 6 years. Gas stations are out of gas, and gas lines in several states. Nice work, Joe. Obviously, Gateway Pundit's pretty political. They're not exactly seen as very pro-Biden, but they hit on a couple of points that I think are very relevant to what we're seeing with gas shortages. Canceling the Keystone Pipeline cost over 11,000 construction jobs, 4,100 jobs throughout the U.S. during the construction process. And then they get a couple stories from Breaking 911's Twitter. The U.S. now has the record gas prices, the highest in 6 years since Barack Obama. Gas prices hit a national average of $2.99 per gallon, which is the highest in 6 years. And then they hit the following other first 100-day accomplishment for Biden, which include the killing of the Keystone Pipeline, $3 gas average, inflation, crumbling dollar, rising unemployment, open border crisis, Antifa, terror squad, skyrocketing homicide, Israel burning, China rising, vaccinated masking. Obviously, the right is not very happy with what's going on in Biden's America, and I think a lot of these points are reasonable points that should be handled by states in general. I know one of the most frustrating things as an individual that's slightly right-leaning is, why are these issues being handled on a federal scale? The only ones on these issues that seem like things that the federal government should really be highly invested in would be things like Israel and China, and I would leave things like, should a pipeline go through my district, up to a local government. Things like vaccinations and masking could be handled by local governments. Unemployment should be handled by local governments. Inflation and the dollar, obviously the Fed has some part in that, but we're not exactly the biggest friends of the Fed on the right. The RNC research noted that Secretary Graham said that pipe is the best way to transport fuel, and this is obviously after what we just talked about with the canceling of the Keystone Pipeline. Everyone is saying that it saves a ton of energy or whatever to get rid of these pipelines. Pipeline is the most efficient way to get these types of goods from one spot to another. The only other option would do something like using trucks or whatever, or ships, and obviously that's not very effective. Also coming from Breaking 911, Biden administration's Special Presidential Envoy for Climate John Kerry says pipelines are the most carbon delivery efficient way to transport fuel. Obviously, this just goes in the face of what's being done with the Keystone XL pipeline. There have been reports that the pipeline would generally be used for exporting fuel, but obviously if we're in some type of crisis internally, that we would not be exporting gasoline, and the fuel would be used internally, because that's where there would be the most demand for it. Coming from Fox Business, Biden refuses to say if he knew the Colonial Pipeline paid hackers $4 to $5 million to get pipeline back online per reports. The pipeline company likely paid more than $4 million to hackers in order to get the pipeline back up and running. The payments are made to the terrorist billionaire John Castimitidis, I'm sorry for butchering the name, told Fox Business's Maria Baritomo on Thursday morning. I understand from my sources that $4 million was paid. When asked by reporters if he knew about the ransom payment, Biden said he had no comment. A restarting of the pipeline will be in the next few days to help restore the flow of gasoline across the eastern part of the U.S., where fuel shortages are abundant. The 5,500-mile pipeline, which transports more than 100 million gallons of fuel per day, or almost half the East Coast supply, was taken offline on Friday by a Russian hacking group called DarkSide that demanded $100 million in ransom. This obviously gets to the question of what should be the proper response to these type of ransomware attacks. Essentially, the way that these attacks work is there's some type of vulnerability that will be abused to allow an individual access to the network. They will then take everything on the network and encrypt it, and for the low price of $100 million, you can get the encryption key to unencrypt your network. Obviously, what's going on here is actual terrorism. there's nothing that's stopping them from, after you pay that $4 million, from them not giving you the encryption token. There's nothing from it being the wrong one. There's nothing that's actually, you can even confirm to say that the data is actually even still there for you to get. So that's the big issue with a lot of these types of attacks. It is dealing with actual terrorism. So, NPR then reports how to stop ransomware attacks. One proposal would prohibit victims from paying up. Prohibiting ransomware payments is the quickest and most effective way to end ransomware attacks, says Brett Callow, a threat analyst with the antivirus firm Emisoft. Attacks happen for one reason and one reason only: they are profitable. If you make them unprofitable, the attacks will stop. It may not be so straightforward, though. In late April, a public-private task force composed of members from Amazon Web Services, Microsoft, the FBI, Secret Service, among others, delivered to the White House an ambitious set of recommendations for a whole lot of government approach to fighting the ransomware threat. In it, they laid out a framework calling on businesses and governments to join forces to develop a coordinated strategy for deterring attacks, disrupt the ransomware business model, and better equip organizations in prepping and responding to cyber assaults. So, obviously, I think this is an absolutely terrible response to ransomware for really two reasons. One, if you're the business that's being affected by this, you don't care at all, in general, for how the market of ransomware supply and demand is. You want to get your business back up and running, because the only thing worse than an unprofitable business is a one that's not doing business at all. And then the second issue with this is this doesn't actually deal with the root issue. The root issue here is bad coding, bad security standards, and bad infrastructure when it comes to cyber defense. The easiest way to solve this is actually handling the cybersecurity threats, making it so you don't have those attack vectors available for hackers to abuse, whether it be domestic or foreign. And the biggest reason why you want to actually handle the cybersecurity threat is there's plenty of individuals out there that are just local domestic hackers that would be happy to take down businesses for the sake of destroying businesses. You can see, just going through anything in any city, that there's plenty of individuals out there that want to destroy any business they possibly can due to their own political motives of being very far left leaning and just saying they want to destroy corporations as a whole. So if the corporations were smart, they would not actually do this whole don't pay ransomware's solution. They would actually make investments to their cyber defense. Coming out of the Daily Wire, Biden's energy secretary on gas crisis: if you drove an electric car, this would not be affecting you. Secretary of Energy Jennifer Graham, I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong. It's Granholm, appeared at a press briefing at White House on Tuesday and took questions about the gas crisis caused by the cyber attack against the pipeline. I just have a question for each of you. I'll start with you, Secretary Graham, because ladies first, the report asks. Obviously, we have an acute issues with the Colonial Pipeline ransomware attack, but looking more historically in a macro review, how does this speed up the efforts at DOE to move in a more of a renewable direction, since this is going to have an impact on people at the pump? Yeah, I mean, we obviously are all in on making sure that we meet the president's goal of getting 100% clean energy by 2035 and net zero carbon emissions by 2015. And if you drive an electric car, this would not be affecting you clearly. The one thing they're clearly missing from this is that electric vehicles still use gas and oil and everything. It's just not at your local pump. It happens, at the electric company level. This is not an actual solution. Electric cars still use, everything else that we're out there. The only difference is that you get to plug it into an electric socket rather than, going to the pump. It still uses the same, root energy sources. The only reason to invest in electric vehicles is hoping that one day the grid turns renewable, and that we have the ability to reuse what we already have for the electric grid. Coming out of CBS News, official warned people not to fill plastic bags with gasoline amid panic over gas shortage. Officials are warning people not to pour gasoline into plastic bags amid the panic over a shortage of gas in southeastern states. The shortage comes after a massive hack at the pipeline, which supplies 45% of the East Coast fuel line. From Maryland to Florida, social media posts show vehicles waiting in long lines for gas. At least 2 tweets, a photo of a car trunk holding clear bags filled with gasoline, and a video of women pouring gas in a plastic bag suggests a panic bag. Customers customers were storing gasoline in bags. While the posts were found by Snopes to be several years old, the U.S. Consumer Product Safety Commission nevertheless posted a flurry of tweets advising people to not carry gasoline in plastic bags or any other container not approved to carry fuel. We know this sounds simple, but when people are desperate, they stop thinking clearly. The commissioner added, they take risks that we have deadly consequences. If you know someone who is thinking about bringing a container not meant for fuel to get gas, please let them know it's dangerous. Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg warned people to not hoard gasoline and echoed the commissioner's alert during a White House press briefing. Obviously, I don't think there's an issue with anyone wanting to hoard gas. If you're panicking during all this, please go out, do what you need to do, fill up your car. I don't care. But biggest thing here is that I don't know why this is actually an issue of hoarding. What's the difference between someone filling up 30 gallons in their truck or someone in their little Honda Accord getting 12 gallons and then filling up a 2-gallon container? Which one is actually worse when it comes to this type of crisis? Finally, we look at 2 tweets related to jobs as well. Coming from Bernie Sanders, Democrats in Congress secured life-saving unemployment aid to workers so they wouldn't have to go back to work for starvation wages or without childcare. I sent a letter to Labor Secretary Walsh today asking him to ensure Republican governments do not strip that assistance away. Obviously, this is a really big issue in my opinion coming out of the Sanders camp. I think this is absolutely stupid. Right now, the biggest thing we have in our economy is tons of jobs. If the best that we can do is offer them unemployment to keep them out of a job, I think this is absolutely deplorable. It is better for them to work a wage and get a job. Finally, coming out of the White House, big news from the CDC. If you're fully vaccinated, you do not need to wear a mask indoors or outdoors in most settings. We've gotten this far. Whether you choose to get vaccinated or wear a mask, please protect yourself until we get to the finish line. Fully vaccinated people can stop wearing a mask. I know that living in a city, this is going to take months for them to actually appreciate that this came out of the CDC. But tell your friends, tell everyone that you can officially not wear a mask. I don't think that this is actually going to catch on by anyone. YouTube will probably try to take this down, but it's coming out of the CDC. It's time that you guys open up and listen. And this is your May 14th Not So News update. Once again, please like and subscribe if you're looking for daily news content, and have a good one.